It can be hard to know when you're ready to train for a marathon. You never really know that you're ready, and there's always a million reasons why later will be a better time to start training. But there are a few signs that you might be ready, and here they are. Signs you might be ready to start training for a marathon. Filmed on the run. You might be ready to train for a marathon if you're willing to follow a plan. You can show up for a 5K having not trained at all, and you can show up for a 10K and maybe even a half marathon having sort of trained and having sort of followed a training plan. But for a marathon, you need to train. You need to train your body, you need to train your mind, you need to train your stomach, and you need to do that at least somewhat strategically by following a plan. You can't show up on race day and wing it. You need a plan and you need to follow it. You may be ready to train for a marathon when you're willing to refuel on the run. For many runners, this isn't a problem, but some runners are strangely averse to refueling on the run. But you need to refuel on the run. Your body cannot store enough energy to get you through a marathon or to get you through the longest of marathon training long runs without refueling. You might be ready to train for a marathon when you know why you want to run a marathon. Marathon training is tough, and it's common at some point during your training to get discouraged. In those moments, you can call on your why to remember why it is you're putting yourself through this training. Alternately, I've known several runners who can't articulate why specifically they want to run a marathon, but it's an idea that they cannot get out of their heads. And for them, that was enough to keep them energized throughout their training. Training for a marathon takes a lot of time, but you don't need to wait for tons of free time to appear on your calendar before you start training. However, you do need to be willing to look at your calendar and make the time to run. You need to be willing to wrestle the time away from other priorities and make the time to run every single week. You might be ready to train for a marathon when you are looking forward to and want a challenge. Marathon training is tough, both mentally and physically. So if you're going into marathon training wanting it or expecting it to be easy, or if you're looking for the easiest training plan, you might be in for a rude awakening, and maybe marathon training isn't the right thing for you to do right now. Before you begin training for a marathon, be sure that you're healthy. Never start marathon training if you're injured or just coming back from injury. Take the time to properly recuperate and heal, and begin training when you're healthy. You might be ready to train for a marathon when you find the process of training at least somewhat fulfilling. Here's what I mean by that. Imagine that you've been training for 16 or 17 weeks and you get injured, or your race is canceled and you can't cross the finish line on race day. How do you feel? Of course you'll be disappointed. It's always great when all of your training leads to an amazing race day, but that isn't always the case. Training for a marathon is a huge accomplishment regardless of what happens on race day. So if you can look at all of your training and still feel a sense of pride and accomplishment regardless of race day, you might be ready to train for a marathon.